If you are dealing with adult acne, I want you to hear this. It is not because you're doing something wrong. Your skin is trying to tell you something, and today I'm going to translate it for you. Hi, I'm Dr. Mamina, a triple board certified dermatologist. I've been treating patients in dermatology for 16 years. I've been in private practice for 12 years, and I really like to take a full body root cause approach to skin health. So that means I'm not just going to hand you a prescription and send you home. We're going to dive deeper into what is going on. And today we're going to dive deep on hormonal acne, why it's happening more than ever, what we actually prescribe in the office, and the exact routine that you can start right now, including some things your derm probably hasn't mentioned yet. Quick housekeeping: if you've been dealing with deep cystic breakouts along your chin, jaw, neck that flare with your cycle, or honestly just seem to never go away, this video is for you. If you're new here, I cover dermatology through a root cause whole body lens. Hit subscribe so you don't miss it. Now let's get into it. So why is adult acne on the rise? So I've been treating patients for over 16 years. I've been in private practice for 12 years. And I can tell you, the dermatologists who've been practicing for 30, 35 years, they will tell you that they see more hormonal acne today than they ever did in the 80s or 90s. So what's actually driving this? Because genetics matter, yes, but genetics don't explain a trend. So something in our environment and our daily lives is turning up the volume on acne, and a lot of it is not your fault. So here's what I think is contributing. First, let's talk about hormonal fluctuations, and I don't just mean puberty. So this is the most underappreciated driver of adult acne in women, and I want to give it the time it deserves. So hormones don't just shift at puberty, they shift constantly throughout your life. And then of course, medications like birth control, IUD, coming off of birth control, and then like conditions, PCOS, different states of hormonal changes, pregnancy, perimenopause, postpartum. Every single one of these can trigger a new wave of acne in an adult woman who never had it as a teenager. The reason is androgen activity. So androgens, which we classically refer to as the male hormones like testosterone, DHT, these can stimulate your oil glands. And when estrogen and progesterone fluctuate or drop, androgens become relatively more dominant or noticeable to the body. So when there's more oil, there's more clogged follicles, more breakouts, and your cycle is actually one of the clearest diagnostic clues I use in the office. If you're breaking out the week before your period, that is considered hormonal. If it's along your jaw and your chin, that's also hormonal. This is your body giving very specific information. Think of acne occurring more so in the beard area of your face. This is where we have a higher concentration of androgen activity. Next, let's talk about cortisol and chronic stress. So here's something that I want to say directly. We have normalized stress in a way that is genuinely harming our health. We treat being busy and overwhelmed as a badge of honor or just like a normal part of our everyday lives. We accept cortisol dysregulation as just the price of being a modern adult, and our skin is definitely paying for it. So when cortisol is chronically elevated, several things happen that directly drive acne. It stimulates the sebaceous glands to produce more oil, and it produces a specific type of inflammatory response in our skin. It disrupts the gut microbiome, and it interferes with sleep, which then further spikes the cortisol the next day. So it's a cycle that's really hard to break if you're not intentionally addressing it. And I'm not saying eliminate stress. That is not realistic. I'm saying that chronic unmanaged stress is not a background condition. It's an active driver of inflammation in your body and on your skin. So we do need to take it seriously. All right, so the next one is caffeine. I know this one's controversial because we all love to consume it, but excess caffeine spikes cortisol, it can disrupt your sleep, and it can act as a diuretic, meaning that you can lose more water and become more dehydrated. Caffeine culture has never been more normalized, and I think it's a bigger factor in adult acne than most people realize. I personally think that caffeine puts your body in this artificial state of stress that is not necessary. All right, next up is diet, specifically processed carbs and dairy. So of all the dietary factors linked to acne, these two food groups have the most consistent data. We know that high glycemic foods like refined sugar, white bread, processed carbs, these can spike your insulin, as well as something called IGF-1, insulin-like growth factor 1. These in turn will amplify androgen activity and oil production. And the mechanism is really well established. Dairy, particularly skim milk, contains hormones and bioactive compounds that can stimulate IGF-1 and androgen pathways regardless of the glycemic load. So that doesn't mean that everyone needs to cut both out, but if your skin consistently reacts to these foods, that is not a coincidence. That is your biology telling you something. All right, next up is supplements. So this one can catch people off guard because we think we're being all healthy by taking all these vitamins, but studies show that high dose B12, B6, even things like whey protein, or if people are on testosterone, these can all exacerbate acne. So if you recently started a new supplement and your skin changed. That is not a coincidence. I would just take a look at what you're taking. Next up, gut microbiome imbalance and constipation. So this one connects more dots than people realize, and I want to explain the full picture. So first, why is gut dysbiosis or a microbiome imbalance so much more prevalent today? One, we do see a lot more antibiotic use, including antibiotics we prescribe for acne, which is one of the great ironies of dermatology. Also, chronic NSAID use, things like ibuprofen, they can disrupt your gut microbiome. We also know that ultra-processed, low-fiber diets can starve your good or beneficial bacteria. We also know that chronic stress can directly alter gut mobility and microbial composition through the gut brain axis. Then there are things like glyphosate, pesticide residues that are rampant in our food. There's also chlorinated drinking water. So this is just a comprehensive assault on the microbiome that previous generations did not experience at this scale. Now, here's a surprising connection that most people miss entirely, and that is constipation and acne. If you're chronically constipated, that is directly relevant to your skin. Fiber, hydration, and a healthy microbiome, these are all part of keeping that elimination pathway working the way it's supposed to. Next up, endocrine disruptors. So the evidence is still building with this whole group, but it's compelling enough to take seriously. So endocrine disrupting chemicals, these are things that are found in plastics, pesticides, synthetic fragrances, air pollution. These can interfere with hormone receptor signaling, things like BPA, PFAS, phthalates. These compounds can mimic or block hormones at very low concentrations. So when your hormone signaling is disrupted, even subtly, skin is often the first place it becomes visible. All right, let's talk about your phones, blue light, and circadian rhythm disruption. I don't think this one gets talked about enough in dermatology. So the blue light that's emitted by our phones and screens, these can suppress your melatonin production. And melatonin is not just a sleep hormone, it's one of the most potent antioxidants in the body, and it has direct anti-inflammatory effects on the skin. So when you're scrolling until midnight, you're not just losing sleep, you're suppressing a compound that actively protects your skin from inflammation. And we've talked about this before. When you have less sleep, you have more cortisol. When you have more cortisol, you have more oil production. And so that's another thing that will further increase acne and worsen your skin. Blue light and circadian disruption from our devices is well established, and that alone is worth taking seriously. And just a friendly reminder that adult skin is not the same as teenage skin. Our skin barrier is more delicate. Oil glands are less active. So the treatments that worked when we were 16 can be too harsh at age 35. So we have to approach this differently. So let's talk about the conventional treatments, what derms will actually prescribe patients with hormonal acne. All right, first, spironolactone. So for chin, jaw, cystic adult acne in women, this is my go-to option. Spironolactone is an androgen blocker, meaning it works by lowering the male hormone activity that drives those deep breakouts. So that lower jaw, beard area, these are the high androgen zones that I mentioned, which is exactly why that's where hormonal acne clusters. This is not an antibiotic. It's not isotretinoin. It's a safe long-term option for the right patient. I would say that 80 to 90% of my hormonal acne patients who try it definitely see significant improvement. Next is topical retinoids. This is a non-negotiable for adult acne, but we do start gentle. So retinoids work by increasing cell turnover. So this clears out your clogged pores that feed the breakouts. And over time, it remodels the skin. But adult skin with already compromised barrier cannot tolerate being thrown right to the highest tretinoin percentage on night one. I typically start patients with adapalene or low-dose tretinoin like 0.025 or 0.05%, and we build up from there. The goal is results without barrier disruption. Next is topical antibiotics like clindamycin. So clindamycin gel is a solid option for active inflammatory acne, but I never prescribe it alone. I always pair it with benzoyl peroxide because benzoyl peroxide will prevent antibiotic resistance from developing. I try to do short courses with this. It's not a long-term solo strategy. Azelaic acid's another topical that I love. It's anti-inflammatory, antibacterial, and it also addresses post-acne red marks and brown marks simultaneously. And it works beautifully for sensitive adult skin that can't tolerate stronger actives. And you can get it both over the counter and as a prescription. Another topical that I like is dapsone, also known as Axone. This is a topical anti-inflammatory that I really like for adult women with hormonal acne. It's gentle, it's well tolerated, and it's a great option for patients who are reactive to other actives. Then there's also sulfur-based topicals. I mean, this is old school, but it's effective. It has natural antibacterial and anti-inflammatory properties, and it tends to be well tolerated by sensitive and adult skin types. So I like it both as a spot treatment or as a wash. Birth control is a whole nother category of treatment. Some formulations are actually FDA approved for acne, like Yaz, Estrostrep, orthotricycline. But here's what I tell patients. Some pills can help acne. Some can make it dramatically worse depending on the progestin formulation and the person. Of course, if you're going to start birth control, this is a conversation to have with your doctor, with your OB or derm. I personally prefer spironolactone because I think it's more targeted for hormonal acne with less side effects. It's all person dependent. Now, all of these require prescription, which means seeing a provider, but you don't necessarily need an in-person appointment. Dermclick is a teledermatology platform that I co-founded with 2 other dermatologists. We wanted to make prescription medicines more accessible and affordable, and you can get these personalized acne treatments from home. So I'll link it below. Of course, prescriptions are powerful, but if you're not addressing the upstream root causes, you're managing just the symptoms. So here's what I recommend to virtually every adult acne patient alongside conventional treatment. First one is pumpkin seed oil. I think this is one of the most underrated supplements for hormonal acne. Pumpkin seed oil naturally inhibits the enzyme that converts testosterone to its more potent acne driving form. So when you have less of that DHT, which is the potent form, you have less sebum production and fewer cystic breakouts. I do recommend it broadly for hormonally driven skin concerns. Next is DIM, or diindolylmethane. So DIM is a compound derived from cruciferous vegetables like broccoli, cauliflower, and this can support healthy estrogen metabolism. So if you have signs of estrogen dominance like breast tenderness, bloating, or a lot of breakouts that week before your period, DIM is worth exploring. Another supplement that I like is Vitex, or chasteberry. So Vitex works actually on the pituitary gland to regulate progesterone levels, and it tends to be more beneficial for women with low progesterone or people who have irregular cycles or PCOS related acne. If your cycle is irregular or your luteal phase is short, this is something to consider discussing with your doctor. And there are specific probiotic strains, particularly lactobacillus and bifidobacterium species, that have been shown to reduce systemic inflammation and improve skin barrier function. I developed Beauty Core specifically with skin-targeted strains in mind. But of course, beyond supplementation, gut-supportive foods matter, like fermented foods, kimchi, sauerkraut, kefir, a wide variety of plant sources, and of course, fiber. There's also omega-3 fatty acids. So omega-3s are chronically underutilized for acne. They can decrease inflammatory signals that feed that cystic breakout pathway. Fish oil, algae-based omega-3s, or just having a significant dietary intake of fatty fish, these can all make a meaningful difference. Okay, then there's also lifestyle factors like actively managing stress. I said it earlier and I'll say it again. Chronic unmanaged stress is not a background condition. It's an active skincare problem. I know when people say like manage your stress, it just feels like such generic advice. So let me be specific about what actually moves the needle. I'm a huge fan of meditation. Even 5 to 10 minutes a day has been shown to reduce cortisol levels and lower inflammatory markers. I'm also a huge fan of breath work, specifically just slow, controlled exhales. This has been shown to activate your parasympathetic nervous system, which can also decrease your cortisol response. And of course, there's movement. Particularly strength training and walking, these can help regulate cortisol over time. Sometimes that intense HIIT exercise can spike your cortisol a little further. So, of course, there's benefits with that. Just find that balance and also just do what you think is sustainable and consistent. And of course, before going to bed, I would minimize screen time. I would avoid looking at your screens 30 to 60 minutes before bedtime. It's just about giving your cortisol that signal that the day is over. Speaking of sleep, even 2 to 3 nights of disrupted sleep can affect your cortisol levels and increase inflammation. We know that sleep is important. It's when your skin is repairing. It's also when it's regulating oil production. It's when it's like sort of resetting your inflammatory baseline. And it's the most powerful and most underused skin treatment that's available to you for free. And then there's diet. I just want to give diet its own moment because I think it deserves to be taken seriously. Not as punishment, but as a tool. We already talked about how constipation drives estrogen recirculation and can worsen hormonal acne. Fiber is the most direct way to fix that. You want to aim for 25 to 35 grams a day from whole food sources, fruits, vegetables, legumes, whole grains. Most people are getting half of that. And then if your diet is low in fiber, that is starving your good bacteria, which, as we discussed, has real consequences for your skin. And then the other reason why we love fruits and vegetables is for the antioxidants and the diversity. So beyond fiber, a wide variety of colorful produce can feed your microbiome and provide antioxidant compounds that reduce inflammation in your body. The more diverse the plant sources, the better. And then we also want to minimize high glycemic foods and dairy. We covered these mechanisms earlier, like insulin spikes, IGF-1, androgen activity. This doesn't have to be all or nothing, but just really being mindful about white bread, sugary drinks, processed snacks. And for those who are sensitive, dairy. These can make a huge difference on your breakouts. The goal is a balanced anti-inflammatory diet. You don't want to be restrictive. We like things like lean proteins, healthy fats, omega-3 rich fish, olive oil, complex carbs, and a wide array of fruits and vegetables. To me, this is a dietary foundation that your skin and honestly your whole body will run best on. Now let's talk about your routine. So here's a practical, accessible routine that actually works for adult acne without destroying your skin barrier. You don't need 12 steps, you just need the right steps. So in the morning, you're gonna cleanse with a gentle fragrance-free cleanser. I love brands like CeraVe, Cetaphil, La Roche-Posay, Vanicream. You're not trying to strip your skin, you're just cleansing. And then you're gonna follow that with a targeted treatment, whether it's azelaic acid, a sulfur-based product, or prescription topical, like we mentioned, clindamycin or dapsone. Then you're gonna follow that with a moisturizer. I'm a fan of something with niacinamide because that also can reduce oil production and strengthen your skin barrier. Of course, SPF sunscreen is a non-negotiable every single day, and it could also help minimize post-acne marks from UV exposure. In the evening, I'm a huge fan of double cleansing, especially if you wear sunscreen or makeup. So that's using an oil-based cleanser first, followed by a gentle cleanser. I think this is the most effective way to remove sunscreen without overstripping. Then you're gonna follow that with a retinoid. I usually tell patients to start 2 to 3 nights per week, but you're eventually gonna work your way up to 5 to 6 nights a week. If you get irritation, you wanna do your moisturizer first, followed by the retinoid. But then after your retinoid is when you apply a moisturizer. If you need to do a spot treatment, I'm okay with using a little benzoyl peroxide or sulfur spot treatment on active breakouts only. So here's what to skip while your skin is inflamed. I would avoid strong exfoliating acids, high percentage vitamin C's, fragrance products, and alcohol-based toners. When your skin barrier is compromised and skin is actively breaking out, these will aggravate rather than help. So let your barrier heal first. So here's what I want you to take away from this. Adult acne is not a teenage problem that you fail to outgrow. It's a signal from your hormones, your gut, your stress response, your environment that something needs attention. And it is absolutely treatable when you can address it at the right level. Clear skin is not about perfection. It's about finding the right approach for your skin, your hormones, and your life. Everything I mentioned today is linked in the description box below: the supplements, the routine products, and Dermclick for prescription access without an in-person visit. If this video helped you understand what's actually behind your breakouts, please share it. I guarantee someone in your life is dealing with adult acne and has no idea where it's coming from. A like helps this reach more people who need it. If you haven't subscribed yet, this is the kind of content I make. Dermatology that actually gets to the root cause, not just the surface. Thank you so much for watching.